Hi everybody. Okay, so let's do the walkthrough explanation of the shape project. Now, as I've mentioned many times before, one of the things you want to do is go ahead and just click on the learning path, which is right up here, and scroll down over to our shape subject, which is right here. Once we click on that, you're going to see that there's, two modules inside the shape project. We have shape presentation / quiz and the shape project part 1 and 2. So right here we have the presentation of shape and the quiz and what have you, and down here we're going to have the shape project video walkthrough, the shape project instructions, visual instructions, and then the actual section where you're going to submit the JPEG photograph of your project. So when you click here, shape project video walkthrough explaining, you're going to see, right now they're not hot links yet, but they will be. The shape project video, this one will be here. You'll have 1 or 2 demos on the project right down in here, and that should be it, right? So the beginning part is going to have all those videos. So let's get back to our shape project. Let's go first and view the instructions here. So right in here we can see that we have the shape project curvilinear rectilinear instructions. When we click this, we're going to see just some text about what we're doing. So part 1, you are going to be gathering your tracings on tracing paper, as it says here. And please notice that I'm saying contour silhouette outlines. This is just the outline. Please do not trace any of the inside parts of the shape. Again, you'll see the demo where I'm tracing some shapes, and maybe you'll get a better understanding of what I mean. Another thing that you want to keep in mind is that you're going to need 3 tracings of rectilinear and 3 tracings of curvilinear shapes, just to add variety to this project. So I'm asking a minimum of that, and then that way you can mix it in. Now for part 2, you're going to be using both the curvilinear and the rectilinear shapes in one compositional format. And then I'm going to show you a technique of how you can take your tracings that are done in pencil, and they will be inverted and then ghosted or rubbed onto your final format of 8 inches by 8 inches. The format here is, or the composition that you're going to be working on, is an 8-inch by 8-inch composition square, and then leave a 1/2-inch border around. Now, if you're using cardstock paper, it's usually 8.5 by 11 sheets. If you're using cardstock paper, it's usually 8.5 by 11 inches. So just cut your regular letterhead cardstock or Bristol paper down to 8.5 by 8.5. And then your project will be on an 8-inch by 8-inch. So that should work out just fine. So you can see that right here, what I have delineated here. As you scroll down with the instructions, you're going to see that I did put some visual, further instructions, but with some visuals in here. And yeah, go, feel free to start reading some of this. You can see that right here, this is where we get it, from magazines. I understand that nowadays many of us don't have magazines, so I guess we're just going to have to do a lot of image searches. You can do image searches on, gymnastics. You're going to get plenty of body forms. You can even do an image search on tropical fruits or what have you for curvilinear. For rectilinear, hey, you could do a search on, military airplanes, cars, furniture. There's quite a few things. You're going to have to think about what are some objects that are very rectilinear that you can then project on your screen, on your monitor, on your iPad, and then use tracing paper and just trace right on there. But again, do not trace the inside of the object. Only trace the silhouette. So here you can see that there's a collection of tracings, and then we're going to compose them together and then put another piece of tracing paper on top and do a master tracing. A master tracing. Once you've done a master tracing with pencil, it's very important, you will then turn that tracing backwards so that the lead is facing down onto your final composition cardstock or Bristol paper. This is where you will retrace from behind. What this does, as you can see here, is that it leaves a ghosting of your lead pencil tracings. Then you will grab your felt tip markers and you will carefully delineate all of those ghost lines, from the lead. The final part of this project is to go ahead and do the figure ground interlocking. And what that interlocking figure ground situation is that wherever things crisscross, in other words, let's just start off like this. All your shapes should be considered, or all your figures, which are the shapes, should be considered black. Wherever they overlap, that will become white. So your background is white, or the ground is white. The figures are black. And when they cross, wherever they cross, that new shape will be considered ground, which will be white. So you can see that right here. That's why I have the W's right there, and I had the B's for black. And you can see this example right here on the side. So I hope that explains quite a bit about the project. Of course, I'm going to show you a little bit with some demos, and projects should be very interesting. What is the purpose? The purpose is to bring out new shapes, new things, new ideas, how things are. It's also, we're playing with composition. Our next milestone or our next topic will be composition. But for right now, I want you to use your intuition, your gut feeling. How does it feel? How do you want to lay things out? Are you going to scatter them out evenly? Is it going to be too concentrated in the center, too heavy on the left or the right, or what have you? So use your intuition, your sense of design. Later, we're going to be more intentful about our layouts. Okay? And I want to talk to you and walk through the Shape Project visual instructions. So for the Shape Project visual instructions, what I've done is I've taken photographs in the past of different aspects and parts of the project. And so right here for the Shape Project, this is an overview. It's basically silhouettes that overlapped. And at one point, it depends, but at one point I did have it mostly curvilinear for one project, and I would have it rectilinear, isolated. But I've decided to mix the two together. So that's why our project's going to have curvilinear and rectilinear together. So how do we start? We start off with tracing paper, and we are tracing silhouettes. Notice that with this tracing, that the student did not trace the inside hands. It's just the outside. Did not trace the face or the eyes or anything like that. You are just tracing the shadow. Same thing here. We are not tracing the details of the microphone. We're just tracing the outside. So here's a nice collection of rectilinear shapes and some curvilinear shapes right in here. And so you're going to collect a few. I'm asking for at least a minimum of 3 curvilinears and 3 rectilinear shapes. We have architecture. We have trophies. And once you've done that, you're going to need to cut them up and isolate these shapes into pieces like this. And what I will need you to do next is to compose them. And what does that mean, right? That means to put them together. This is the design process. This is the activity. This is the action. You are going to compose the composition. And for us, what we're going to do is we're going to combine the two. We're going to do rectilinear and curvilinear. Here is a nice example of mostly rectilinear. And this student focused a lot on furniture. Notice that the furniture, you don't see that table going around. You just see the shadow that's been done, right? So let's take a closer look. And you can see through it. You can see the other shapes. And that's why we use the tracing paper, because it's nice to see, how they blend together. Once you've done that, you're going to lay them down. You're not going to glue these separate pieces. You're just going to lay it down. And then you're going to very gently place a tracing paper on top. Another tracing paper. And this will be your master, template. And you're going to trace over all of your tracings. Once you've done that, right, and here's some examples of curvilinear. Look, take a look at this shoe, right? I told the student they had done the silhouette of the shoe, and they also had done the inside line of the shoe. And I said to the student, that is not the silhouette. Do not trace the inside line of that shoe. You must only trace the outside. So there's still time to correct any mistakes that you have made. Same thing here. They had done a tracing of the skull, and they traced the inside eye sockets and the teeth. And I said, that is not the silhouette. The silhouette is just the outside contour line. Once you've traced all these pieces of, that you've composed into a master template, this is what it should look like, right? You have one sheet. Now you're going to try to transfer the ghosting of your tracings. Keep in mind, you're using pencil throughout this whole process. You must use pencil. With the pencil, for instance, here on one side, I have the tracing with the letter R that you could see, right? This is with lead pencil. I'm going to turn that paper over. And when I turn it over, this is why the R is backwards. And the lead now is underneath. What I'm going to do is I'm either going to rub with my fingers, it depends how soft the lead pencil you were using is, or, right, because you can see when I remove it, I can see the ghosting. Another technique that you can do, right, this is just showing you the ghosting right in here. This is the ghosting that you're going to see. Another technique that you can do that some students have done is they'll put lead through the whole back of the tracing, turn it over, and then trace. But I feel like that's a bit messy, so I would not advise that. I think the other option, really, that's the best option, rather than rubbing with your finger behind it, and honestly, I really think that you guys should do it this way, is, you turn your tracing over, your master tracing paper over, and then you retrace right on top. And when you retrace right on top, this is what happens. You get this nice ghosting that's there. And that's going to be perfect. That's all you need. Later on, you can come in and, fill in those spots. I know some students like to go in and retrace it with the pencil just in case they can't really see it and they want to be sure. You could do that, but do not be too dark about it. Keep it very light. Remember, we want to keep our paper clean, the white paper clean. It's craftsmanship. We want to work on that. After that, we're going to take our felt tip markers, choose a small size or a medium size of your felt tip marker, and you're going to go and retrace around it carefully. Carefully. Once that's done, right, and these are just some examples of how you're going to overlay, we're going to talk about figure ground interlocking, or interlocking figure ground technique. Here you can see some shapes. And I have this here because I want to let you guys know that when you overlap some of your tracings, some of your contour, outline, silhouette shapes, when you overlap them, you kind of want to avoid triple overlap. It's safe to just do a single overlap, okay? So right here, I have like the square and the triangle right here. It's overlapped just once. Over here, I have maybe 3 overlaps right in here. And it just starts to get tricky because we're going to need to start labeling what's going to be black and what's going to be white and how it checkers or interlocks with the figure ground. So for instance, here we have this composition, and once you do the interlocking, it turns out to look like this. This student decided to make the whole ground be black and the figures be white. You can do that, but you're going to use a lot of that black ink from your marker. And you really need to use that good marker that I recommended in the material list if you don't want to see any of those lines from a Sharpie or a cheap marker. So I suggest that you actually make the figures black and the ground white, but it's up to you. Right? Here we have rectilinear shapes. This student decided, I guess they have some military magazines, and they traced a whole mess of military airplanes that are quite rectilinear. And they decided to make the figure black and the background or the ground white. Now, wherever they overlapped, you have to inverse that black. That black becomes white. And if they overlap again, then you have to reverse or invert that figure ground relationship of black and white. This is a nice piece right here with nature, right? And it becomes really activated when you start doing these interlocking figure ground, play of black and white. You can call it checkering if you like a checker or checkers or a chessboard. So here's an example. Right, I have a square shape, a triangular shape. If I make the background black and the shapes white, wherever the shapes overlap and create a new shape, we're going to paint it black. The purpose of doing interlocking figure ground with black and white is so that we can make more evident these new shapes, these, you could say abstracted shapes, okay, from the overlaps, right? So this is what would happen. When you do your project and you're like, okay, so how do I begin and how do I plan this out? Because you want to plan this out before you start with the black marker. Otherwise, you're going to get yourself into trouble if you wrongly paint an area black, because it's kind of hard to erase black ink. So what I suggest to students is that they very lightly with pencil, after they've traced all the shapes with the felt tip pen, to very lightly with pencil, just label like WB, WB. And then you can start to see, right? So here we have a triple or a double overlap, right? So we have white, white, black, black. But then when they overlap again, right, for like a second time, that becomes white right in there. Even in here. So it's better to do that so you can see if you're going to be in trouble with any of the overlapping. If you did excessive overlaps, that's when you can get into trouble. Okay? So this is what it would look like. All right. I hope that explains the project visually for you guys. All right. So once that's done, you're going to come back to your shape project area, and you're going to submit your work right here under Shape Project Submission. Please remember, JPEGs only. If it's a PDF, I will accept PDFs as well, but just JPEGs and PDFs. All right, everybody, have fun. Seriously, have fun. Enjoy. You know when doing these projects are not fun? When you're doing it under pressure, when you're doing it last minute. Understand that part of doing these projects manually rather than on the computer digitized is that you're going through it physically.